You need a website. Why not do it yourself? Go to Wix.com to create your stunning website today.
Welcome back, everyone. So users can log called express-cc. I keep typing CSS. It's second nature to me by now. Welcome, everybody. This
chatty, and then I'm going to get into that directory, and let's start a new code base. I'm using Visual Studio Code as my editor. If you're interested, you can download it. It's cross-platform. I really like it, but of course you can use any editor you want. So if I do a code dot, it's going to open my Visual Studio Code, and I can now start doing some coding. So let's start with a simple added copied. So here it is. And now we're ready to do some coding. You know what? Let me just make sure that the font size is actually larger. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've increased the font size a little. I already had it. Anyway, so let's
Have you ever looked for a hotel online? Well, Trivago does the work for you and instantly compares prices.
Hey, what's up? This is Scott with Level Up Tuts, and today I'm going to show you how you can install Yaku to have the fuzzy abbreviations are really nice in that. However, I would say there is nothing better than Emmet for. And let's find install package, and now we're going to look for Emmet. Now that's E-M-M-E-T. Here we have it. Now with Emmet, we just have to wait, and it's going to tell you to restart the editor. So I'm going to go ahead and quit Sublime and then restart it. Okay, Sublime Text is back and Emmet is here. You'll see there's a little bit of documentation here you can read, and it tells you, and you read it to do all this. If we want to have a div out here, let's go to an HTML document instead of having to do all this stuff by hand. So let's go to an HTML document and let's just try it out here. So if we want to have a div, all we have to do is type period and then hit tab. And then that's going to open us a div with just having a class here. If we didn't want a class, we could even just type div just like that, but Sublime Text does that normally. So we could also say period and then a class name such as content box, then hit tab, and it's going to fill in that for us. Now
let's give it a title. The way I did this Visual Studio Code, and I can now start doing some coding. So let's start with a simple index.html file, and let's just create some boilerplate. By the way, I did this using something called Emmet in case you're interested. Emmet lets you do a lot of autofills and boilerplate for HTML, so it's really cool. Anyway, so let's give it a title.
Let's actually just delete that, and you'll see that I can do dot content area, and then I have a greater than sign.
Let's suppose that you're writing a really important email to a colleague.
Hello everyone. In this earlier lesson that to install a package we use the command and CSS wizard, let's get started. Alright, let's begin by installing the Emmet package. So we learned in an earlier lesson that to install a package we use the command palette. So Command Shift P. If you are on a PC, that's Control Shift P. Begin typing install package. Here's the option. Hit enter. Alright, and now we are going to search for Emmet. So that's E and then two M's. Here it is. Hit enter. Be patient. Wait a few seconds. And we've got it. We've got the golden ticket. We have Emmet. So we can go ahead and close this README file because you're watching a video lesson on how to use Emmet. Let's play it safe and close Sublime Text and relaunch the application. Now we can get down to business. So let's imagine that we're writing HTML and we want to create an unordered list with a few list items inside it. So without Emmet, we might use Sublime Text snippets, type UL, hit tab, type LI. Let's imagine that we're writing HTML README file because you're watching a video lesson on how to use Emmet. Let's play it safe and close Sublime Text and relaunch the application. Now we can get down to business. So let's imagine that we're writing HTML and we want to create an unordered list with a few list items inside it. So without Emmet, we might use Sublime Text Snippets, type UL, hit tab, type LI, hit tab, hit LI, tab. But we can be even more efficient with Emmet. So watch this. Type UL, the greater than symbol, LI, and then hit tab. And we can take it a step further. So let's imagine that we wanted to include a link or an anchor inside the list item. Emmet lets us nest as many layers deep as we need to go. So to do that with Emmet, we would type UL, greater than symbol, list item, greater than symbol, A for anchor. Hit tab. It places our cursor in the href value, so I will include a pound.
And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to use Bootstrap for the CSS, so it just makes our life a little bit easier. So I'm just going to paste the CSS for Bootstrap under my head tag. I already had it copied, so here. So I'm just going to paste the CSS for Bootstrap under my head tag. I already had it CSS, so it just makes our life a little. Bit easier. So I'm just going to paste the CSS for Bootstrap under my head tag. I already had it copied, so here it is. And now we're ready to do some coding. You know what, let me just make sure that the font size is actually large. Sure. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've increased the font size a little bit, so it's makes our life easier to see, especially on videos. Okay, so now let's just add something to the body. So Bootstrap, I'm going to do a 2-column grid, right? Because if you look at this window here, I have on the left the online users and on the right the chat window. So this is going to be a 2 column and this is going to be a 10 column so that I can complete my 12 column grid. Okay, so let's do that. So let's do div class equals to md2. That's going to be my first div. And then my second div. Right, and then let's just indent this code a little bit. Okay, so within these columns for now, let's just put some text to see how it looks. We're going to save this. Let's open right now this is just an index.html file, so I'm just going to open that. Okay, so of course right now it's not a whole lot of stuff, but you can see the online users and my chat window. So I've got the 2 columns in here now. Okay, so let's start some fun stuff here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add a Bootstrap class called panel. So essentially it's going to give me the panel look that I had on the other window, right? On the initial chat window. So let's do that. So let's now add div, and we're going to call it the class of panel. And panel usually is divided into 3 parts, like heading, body, and footer. So we're going to do panel heading here. Okay, so now we have that, and oops. Okay, so now here what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a Glyphicon so I can see my user icon. So again, Bootstrap provides you that. So let's just do that. I already have that ready. So I'm going to copy paste my class, and then I'm just going to say online. And maybe I'll show a count. For now, I'm just going to hard code it to 10 or like say 5, something like that. Okay, so we do that. And that takes care of the number of online users. And then we can show in the right after the online heading, let's add an unordered list. Okay, and then here we're just gonna say, you know, maybe a list item of user 1 or something like that. And then right now I'm just gonna hard code everything. So user 2. Okay, and then let's just close the unordered list, and we're good to go. So with this, so let's save it. And if I refresh my page here, I can see the online users. Hard-coded list. So let's just finish the chat window side as well. Okay, so for the chat window side, we're just going to create a container that shows me all the chat. So we're going to use another div. This is going to be our custom class, and I will write some code there, but let's just say class equals to, and again I'm just going to use panel, and this time I'm going to do panel primary. So this one is actually going to show me a primary panel, which usually has a background color on the top. And then again I'm going to add a div inside that div, so let's close this div. Right now I'm going to wrap all of this with heading. Oops, I mean panel heading. Okay, and then let's close that. And then maybe we want to add some text on that, so we can just say something like let's chat. And then we're okay, so we closed panel heading, right? So that's good. Let's add another div, which is the panel body. And again, close this div, and then inside that we're going to just show, like, you know, a list of chats. So again, for now, let's just create an unordered list, and then inside that we're gonna do ally, oops, and then I guess it's just gonna be message. Maybe add another one. Switch to. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Okay, so this obviously is a little, you know, unprofessional at this time, but at least it looks like we have the panel ready. Okay, so now let's do a couple of things here. We also need to add a text box at the end so that we can type the message. So let's do that. So for that, I'm just going to create a basically a footer. So let's say, so where's the body closing here? So we're going to add another div, and we'll call it class equals to panel footer. Again, these are all standard Bootstrap classes. And in here, maybe we can add a form, right? And then we're just going to close the form, and inside the form, let's just wrap an input type equals to text. Okay, and maybe class equals to form control, which is you know, the Bootstrap class, and then input large. Okay, so let's just do that, and then maybe placeholder equals to something type chat here. Now let's close that input. So that takes care of my form. Okay, so, and then, you know, I've got all the divs and the body closing. Okay, so save all this, just you know, indent everything. All right, so I have everything here now. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we got the chat. Now real quick, we're going to, of course, add some height on this chat window because it doesn't look nice by default. We want to fix the height a little bit. So, so now we need to add some custom CSS of our own. So for now, so let's just do that actually. We go back here and we're going to add a new file called main.css. So this is going to be our CSS. And then basically we need to wrap this, the entire chat window, this one, into with a height, so we can add a class to that. So we're going to just say something like this, ID. So I'm going to create a ID is live chat container. Again, I just copy pasted it because I had it copied before. I'm going to use an ID, and I will show you why I'm using an ID, not a class. But anyway, for now, that's what we're going to do. And then once we close that, ID is live chat container. Again, I just copy pasted it because I had it copied before. I'm going to use an ID, and I will show you why I'm using an ID, not a class. But anyway, for now, that's what we're going to do. And then once we close that div, so we need to, of course, then, close this div at the. Welcome to my channel. In this series, we're going to learn how to build a chat room from scratch. To keep it copied before, I'm going to use an ID, and I will show you why I'm using an ID, not a class. But anyway, for now, that's what we're going to do. And then once we close that div, so we need to, of course, then, close this div at the. Welcome to part 2 of the series on building a chat room. As we worked on the HTML CSS mockup in part 1, I realized that I may be spending too much time on the static HTML CSS when the goal of this tutorial is not that, right? So just to save us a little bit of time, I finished that mockup, and this is what it looks like now. So we still have our index.html, and it's all static. But now you can see the styling is complete, and let's just refresh this, make sure it's right. Yeah. And then I have the online users. Again, everything is static right now. And then the chat window looks nice. It has a decent height, and I can type my chat here. So that takes care of my HTML CSS. Again, it's primarily Bootstrap, but I added our main.css to add some custom styling. So everything will be on. But now you can see the styling is complete, and let's just refresh this, make sure it's right. Yeah. And then I have the online users. Again, everything is static right now. And then the chat window looks nice. It has a decent height, and I can type my chat here. So that takes care of my HTML CSS. Again, it's primarily Bootstrap. extract, but I added our main.css to add some custom styling. So everything will be on GitHub, of course, for you to look at. So I'm not going to go through this HTML.
Get ready.
Hello. So welcome back. We're going to be continuing this chat application. So let's just go. So if you're just joining me, I'm creating a live chat application here.
Welcome to my channel. In this series, we're going to learn how to build a chat room from CSS itself, but this is what it looks like now. Okay, so in this tutorial, we're going to go through the process of adding JavaScript so that we can do some dynamic stuff. So again, before we get into the actual chat application, let's put some JavaScript building blocks in this tutorial so that we're ready for the actual chat part, which will be done in sockets or something called WebSockets. Okay, so I'm actually going to use node.js to run our server. And if you're not familiar, again, if you go to node.js.org, it is basically a JavaScript runtime. It allows you to do a bunch of things, but primarily people use it on the server side for, you could build like web applications and use Node.js as a server. You could use it for other things. It's not just for web applications. But in our case, obviously, we're going to use it for the web application, and it's very simple to get started. You need to download the latest version In my case, I have a Mac. If you are using PC, whatever, there are ways to, of course, install it. For all different platforms. So you need to install Node, and then there's something called npm, which is really a package manager for Node. So I know this is a lot of stuff if you've never heard of Node before, but the idea of npm is that it allows you to set up packages for primarily for Node. So Node is an entire ecosystem. So there's a lot of packages or modules that are already created for Node. And npm allows you to just takes care of that. And actually, it's not just for Node, it's for any JavaScript library that you can create. So there's a lot of JavaScript libraries out there that you can install using npm. So you need to download npm as well, and node.js to get the server set up that I need to go through here. Okay, so once you have Node and npm downloaded and installed, you should be able to go to your terminal and just check that. So for Node, just run a node-v, node-v, small v here, and then it shows you the version. So I have Node installed, so that's good. And I think you can do the same thing for npm. And npm has its own version, of course. It's not the same as the Node version in this case, because remember, npm can be used for any JavaScript library. So Node, and npm are not necessarily related, but the idea is that we need both so that we can install some existing packages for our chat application. Okay, so I have got Node and npm both installed. And again, if you're not sure how to install them, there's plenty of tutorials on the web, on YouTube, on Google. So make sure you have Node and npm installed. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do to make sure we're in our directory. So we're still in the chatty directory, our project. And if I just run a quick ls, I still have these two files. Let me just hit something here, do something here. Alias ls -lt. This is a quick command so that now my ls will be more pretty. Okay. So the first thing we need to do, let's clear this out. I'm going to do npm init. So basically I'm initializing this current directory that's going to now install npm modules. So it could be a JavaScript module or a JavaScript package, right? So we're going to do npm init. So it says this utility tool will walk you through creating a package.json file and a bunch of things. So basically, when you install these JavaScript packages, you put all the dependencies and the names in a file called package.json. So that essentially says, if I take this project and install it on a server somewhere else, this is right now my local machine, but if I install anywhere else, then I can just take that package.json file and just run it so that it installs all the dependencies and the packages that I need. Okay, so I want to make sure I don't spend too much time on this, but I wanted to, brush over it in case you're not familiar with this whole Node and NPM ecosystem at all. Okay, so we need to give it a name. I'm going to keep the same name, Chatty, by default. Version, same. I can just leave it default. Our chat room application. I'm just going to give it a description. Entry point. So this is where basically it's saying where do you start, right? So I'm going to leave it as index.js for now. Leave all this blank. Don't really need to worry about Git for now. Keywords, whatever, chat room, author, me, license, MIT, whatever. Okay, so once I hit enter, see it says, is this okay? And I have to do yes or no. So of course, the JSON looks like this, and I think it's good to go. So I'm just gonna say, yes. Okay, so now if I look into my list, I should see a package.json file here, which is what I wanted. And if I look into my Visual Studio Code, yep, I have that here. Okay, So now I've initialized my npm or my node modules, my package.json. So the first thing I'm going to do is that we need to now run a server. So to do that, we need to have a module called express.js, which is sort of an implementation of it's a node framework. So express.js, if I look at that, it's a minimalist web framework for Node. So again, remember, Node is an entire ecosystem. So we need to install Express so that we can create web applications. It allows you to do web applications, APIs, HTTP request response cycle and all that stuff. So obviously we're going to need that. So to install that, we need to run this command, npm install, and then the name of the module, and then -- save, which I will show you what that does. So I'm just going to copy this and make sure I'm in the right directory. I'm going to paste that. So basically I'm saying install the Express module, and npm knows, based on the name, where to find it and how to install it. And then the -- save is saying that I want to save this as a dependency. So, which means that the next time if I recreate this application somewhere else, I already know I already know that I need Express. And what that does, if I hit save here, it actually, you should not see any errors. It should see something like this. There might be this, and make sure I'm in the right directory. I'm going to paste that. So basically I'm saying install the Express module, and npm knows, based on the name, where to find it and how to install it. And then the -- save is saying that I want to save this as a dependency. So, which means that the next time if I recreate this application somewhere else, I already know I already know that I need Express. And what that does, if I hit save here, it actually, you should not see any errors. It should see something like this. There might be some warnings, but that's fine. It's just saying no repository field. It doesn't really matter. But it's going to show you all the stuff. So you can see that Express is like a tree structure here. Express itself installs a bunch of packages that it requires. So that's the thing with the whole Node ecosystem. This is one thing to be careful about. It's very easy to install these packages, or these modules, but there could be too many of them, because one module could itself has many dependencies. So sometimes it kind of gets bloated. That's one of the drawbacks or disadvantages of the whole npm or Node ecosystem. But anyway, once I run this, I should now see my package.json file, and I'm just going to reload it and see if I can find something here. Dependencies, there you go. So remember last time I didn't have this here when I initially created this JSON file. So so that -- save, that's what it did. It added a dependencies property here, an object, and it says, okay, I need Express as my dependency. So next time if I run this somewhere else on another computer, or actually when I go release it in production, I could just, rerun npm install, and it will install all the dependencies. So so npm install actually just by itself will look into your package.json file and install any dependency that's listed there. Okay, so that's all it does. All right, so I've got the Express requirement done. So I can now, I'm almost ready to do my server stuff. All right, so let's create that server file. Remember our entry point, we said that we're going to do index.js is my entry point. So let's create that file. And again, I'm not really splitting this into multiple directories. I'm just keeping everything in the same directory. So let's put index.js here. One thing again, on Node, when you install Node or a package or a module, it will put that under a folder called node_modules. And you can see here, there's a lot of stuff here, because when we installed Express, it actually required installing other stuff, because Express has its own package.json and its own dependencies. So if you look at the package.json of Express, you can see here, and it kind of like goes in a chain, you know. So, and this is where, you know, Node kind of gets bloated sometimes. But anyway, so you can see the dependencies of Express. So all these modules also need to be installed when you run install for Express. So anyway, so just make sure, don't get scared of this node modules folder. Just never change this. Don't try to edit this directly. If you need to pull in a package or an update, there are ways to do that in Node ecosystem again, or in the NPM ecosystem. But anyway, okay, so index.js, we need to create this for the server. So we need to first say something like this. I'm going to call it express equals to require and express. So what this does, it's saying, okay, I need to use the express module. So I'm going to require it in this JavaScript file, and I'm going to put this in a variable called express. So of course, this can be anything, the var, the name of the variable itself, but I'm putting that in express just to keep things simple. And then the next thing is you need to instantiate an application on the server for this express, which you have to just call it. So you could do express this. So basically these two steps are going to instantiate my app or my application. So you know, as a shortcut, I could have just done var app, you know, equals to require express and then just call it. That's fine too. But I don't like shortcuts too much because it's, you know, makes me feel lost sometimes. I like to do things more explicit. So I'm going to do express first, and then I'm going to do an app, which is really calling the express function. Okay. And the next thing is, then I need to define a server variable, which is going to require another module called HTTP. And on that one, I'm going to do a dot server. Again, this is a function that this HTTP module has, and I'm going to attach my app to it. So this kind of completes the cycle of initializing my application on the server side. So now I have a server, really. And now I could do something like server dot, I need to listen on a certain port. So again, whenever you have a server, your server needs to run and listen to specific ports. So for Node, we do something like this: server.listen. We're going to add a port number. So we just say port, and then we wrap this in a function. And basically, just to test, I'm going to do console.log and something like listening on port, or listening on whatever your URL is, colon the port number plus port. Okay. So I didn't need to wrap this in a function, but I didn't put anything inside the function. I'm just doing it for debugging purposes. So, and I'll show you what this looks like. Okay. All right. So next thing, what we're going to do, we need to say, this is again one of the things that you need to do with Express. To serve any static files, you need to tell Express which directory to look into. So we need to say app.use express dot, and then we need to say which static folder it is. So the current folder goes under this special keyword called __dir name. So essentially this line is really saying that I need to use static files and they're in this current directory. Okay. All right, so this completes the initialization of my server side, and now I can do, actually send a request, or receive a request. So if I say app.get, so for the home page, I'm just going to do simple slash, and again, get building function. What happens? And it takes a request and a response, and then let's say I need to return, if somebody calls the URL homepage URL slash, I'm going to return a file in this case, which is again in my current directory path, and the file name is index.html, which we created earlier. Okay, so again, if you look at this simple stuff, this is a pretty much a boilerplate that you need to do for any node server. You need to use Express in this case, and then you instantiate the app, then you instantiate the server, and then you need to listen on a specific port, and then you you use the static directories, and then you do your get or post, the usual HTTP stuff, right? One thing I forgot here, notice, I did not define this port here yet. I need to define a port so that I could use it. So the port number needs to be explicitly defined here. So I have to do var port equals, again, this is node thing, script process.env, which is basically saying if I have an environment variable defined on my server which contains this port environment variable, then use that. If not, or this pipe symbol, so it's like saying if that's not available or it's not found, then just use a default of 3000. This is a pretty standard node convention. You can use really any port number, especially on my local machine. Make sure it's not being used by any other process, but 3000 is something that most people go with, especially for local development. Okay, so my port is defined. Now I could listen to it and do a bunch of things. Okay, cool. So this should take care of everything. Now, if I go back to my browser, and let's close this tab. So I don't need to really call my static file. I could do something like localhost :3000, and site can't be reached. Of course, the reason is I defined everything, but I didn't really, first of all, I didn't really start my node server, my server. I have the index, this JS file defined, but I need to start the server, right? You always start the server somewhere. So to do that, you need to go into your terminal, and you just do node and then the entry point file, index.js. So this will start your node server. Now, you may have seen other variations of this, and the reason is because you could put something called a script in your node in your package.json file. So some package.json files have script words defined. So like in this case, test. So if I do npm test, it's going to basically do this. So like for example, again, just to show you here, if I do npm test, you know, it's going to say echo error, no test specified. This is what it pulled, right? Obviously. And that's fine. So essentially, a lot of times to start the server, people put that script in. Basically, you know, here under scripts object. But by default, you could just do node and then the entry point. So a lot of time you might have seen npm start or npm server, something like that. That's just based on what you define in the script here. Okay, so in my case, let's just do node and then the entry point, which is my index.js. And see how it says listening on this, you know, asterisk or star and then the port 3000, which is coming from here that we logged on the console. One more thing about the console, this is not the console on your browser. Just make sure you understand that, because I'm running index.js. This is my on the node side, so this is my server. So this console will not show up in your browser. This is more on the server, and in this case, this is my server here. So any console.log you do on your server side will show up, of course, you know, on the server, which in this case is here. In my case, in my terminal for now. Okay, so that's good. So we're good with Node. So now if I hit localhost, and bam, everything looks great. So now I can run that index.html file. But now I have successfully started a Node server. So now I can do a lot of stuff. Pretty cool. Okay, so Node is up and running. What do we do next? For the client-side JavaScript, we also need to add a library called Vue.js. So what is that? So let's look at that real quick. If you go to Vue.js.org, it's a progressive JavaScript framework. What that means is that it's just one of the new JavaScript libraries out there, which I really like personally, and it's becoming very popular. It's sort of a competition to, say, React or Angular, one of those libraries. You know, it's not comparable to, say, jQuery. You know, it's more like React and Angular. It does provide you things like data binding. So between your JavaScript and HTML, you can build single page apps, you know, and a bunch of other things. And it's supposed to be very easy to use, and that's the reason I like it. Again, no preference. You could build this in any JavaScript framework, including jQuery, you know, good old jQuery. But in this tutorial, I'm going to be using Vue.js. So obviously, this tutorial is not going to focus too much on Vue, but you need to. But I'm going to go through a little bit of Vue, especially for what we need to build a chat room. But you're free to go to Vue.js.org. Their documentation is pretty decent. You know, you can get started here and look at all the different examples and tutorials. And YouTube also has a bunch of good tutorials on Vue.js these days. Okay, it's becoming very popular, I have to say. So for the client-side JavaScript, we're going to use Vue.js. Okay, so what do we do to use Vue.js? The first thing we need to do, of course, we need to get the Vue.js library and add this into our index.html file. So again, there's many ways to do that. You can do npm install, I think, Vue, other things. In my case, I'm just going to keep it very simple. I'm just going to copy and paste the CDN, that Vue has, it's available on a CDN. So just before your body tag ends, put this script tag, and this is your Vue.js CDN. Again, one of the things that a lot of people get confused with, where to put the script tag. Sometimes it goes in the head, sometimes it goes in the body. On most modern browsers, it's better to put this in the body tag at the very end so that it loads after the body has loaded, everything else is loaded. And that way it's safer, and also you're not creating something called a blocking resource. If you run like a page speed in Google, sometimes it will say you have a blocking resource like a JavaScript because it's in the head, which means until that loads, nothing else is loading. So anyway, so put this in the body tag at the end. That should do it. Once you've done that, we need to now use it. So how do we use it? I could put like a script tag right below this. Make sure you're doing it after the script tag here in Vue.js. And I could do script. Okay, and let's just close that. And then inside my script tag, I could do new Vue. And this is a way of instantiating your Vue object, which this JavaScript file is providing to you, this Vue.js. Okay, so you do new Vue, and then it takes a bunch of stuff, and the format is very simple. You need to tell which element we need to attach this Vue instance to. Again, I know it sounds a little complex, but I'll explain. So I'm going to do app, comma. So I'll come back to that, but the next thing is an attribute called data, or property called data. So data is saying when my application loads or when my application starts, what kind of data I'm going to be using. So in my chat room application, of course, we are going to use, say, connected users. So who are my connected users? So it's going to be connected users, and it's going to be a list of users. So it's going to be an array, and everything starts with blank. Messages, maybe, which are my chat messages. Again, it's going to be in blank array to instantiate. And then the individual chat message itself needs to be defined, because it's going to have some properties, right? Let's say, for example, type, and I will show you what that is, but I'm just gonna put this as a blank again, and then you may have something called action. What am I doing? So here, we'll just get all this out of the door. User, who the user is, who sent the chat. Text, I could call it something else, but that's fine. This is the actual chat message. This is the actual text, like hello, how are you, or something. So that's going to be the text. So, and then maybe we want to store the timestamp of the chat message. So we're going to do timestamp. Okay, so that defines my my message object. And then maybe I need another property called our typing. So this is going to be a list of all the users that are typing, because remember, we're going to be implementing that feature as well, that it will show who's typing. Okay, so we're going to do our typing, and it's blank. All right. After the data, you also need to define something called a created function. and right now just leave it blank. And this is again a special keyword function for Vue, which says once this instance is created, what happens? You know, a few things happens, right? So whatever happens after this Vue instance is ready to go, put them here. So obviously we will do things like once this instance is ready, you know, we're going to start saying, okay, who joined, is there a chat being sent, and things like that. So we will capture all that under the created instance. So another created function. So this is again a special function that Vue provides that you need to define. Okay, and after that, there's one more thing, which is that we need to define what methods we will be using in my JavaScript or in my Vue instance. So this is where you can actually define a bunch of things, functions really, or methods, because you obviously don't want to rewrite code, right, boilerplate and all that stuff. So any function that you define your own function, that they go here. For example, we will have a function called send for sending the actual chat message back to the users, on my screen, right? So we're gonna have a send function, and things like that. Maybe we will have another function. So again, you separate them by commas. We're gonna have a function called user is typing. So this tells you an individual user is typing, and this may take a username, and then it's going to return a boolean, right? True, false, whatever. And then of course we also need to check if users are typing, which remember we had an array on the top. So we need to say not only that a single user is typing, we also need to know at one point of time how many users are typing, because we want to show every user that's typing, all right, which is the cool part. So we're going to have that function, and then it's going to be a function again, and let's leave it blank. And of course, if they're typing, we also need to catch if someone has stopped typing, or how many users or which users have stopped typing. So let's put this in a function again for now. Okay, so I've done a lot of boilerplate here for the Vue instance, and let me show you what it looks like. Just to show you as a test example, I'm going to create something called, I'm going to create something called delete later. This is just a test attribute. I'm just going to call it hello world, just to show you the power of Vue, how easy it is. So now I have a data attribute called delete later. So this means that in my HTML, which is here, I could now access it. Okay, so let's try to do that. And the way you access it is by using curly braces, 2 curly braces. That's like your, just like a lot of templating engines, if you're aware of other templating engines. So let's put this in a function again, and then it's going to return. We're going to and it's going to be a list of users, so it's going to be an array, and using in my again for now access it. Okay, so let's try to do that. And the way you access it is by using curly braces, 2 curly braces. That's like your, just like a lot of templating engines, if you're aware of other templating engines or template languages. Pretty standard, right? So you use double curly braces, and I'm gonna just do delete later. So whatever the value of delete later at a certain point of time is, it's going to update it. And the beauty is it updates in real time, as in, it's a hot reload. It doesn't, you don't have to reload the page to see it. So if you change the value somewhere in a JavaScript, it's going to update it. So let me show you that. If I now go and let's just, restart the server just to be safe, even though in this case I don't think it was required, but I always like to be safe. I'm going to start my server and reload the page, and it's going to show me delete later. But obviously it didn't work because we didn't have the value is not showing. The hello world should have shown here. So what happened? What happened is we forgot one thing, which is in my index.html JavaScript here at the bottom. Remember we talked about this element or EL property. So what Vue does, it asks you which element in your HTML you want to attach this entire Vue instance to. And you have to be explicit about it. If you don't say which element, it's not going to work. It doesn't work by default on the entire HTML DOM. So what we need to do, what this is saying really is that attach this to an element with an ID. This is, this hash is an ID, right? In CSS, ID of app. So that means we need to have an element in my HTML with an ID of app. I could do that on the body tag, but I don't like that. I like to create my own div, and I'm going to call it div ID equals to app. And then I want the Vue instance to work on the entire HTML, so I'm going to wrap this div in the entire body. So everything inside the div should be under the Vue instance. So I'm going to close this div at the very end. Of course, before the script tags. So essentially, I'm saying that entire HTML should have access to the Vue instance, or the Vue instance should be attached to the entire DOM under the body. Okay, so that's what it does. So now let's save it and let's try to reload this page. Let's see what it does. Yep, hello world. Successful Vue.js implementation. I know it's very basic, but that's the building block of Vue.js. We have instantiated data, and it shows here in the HTML real time. So let me show you something quick here that's again useful for using Vue.js. If I open my console, my Chrome browser I'm using, there's something called a Vue Dev Tools, a Chrome extension called Vue Dev Tools. So you should go and download and install the Vue Dev Tools Chrome plugin. It's not required, but it helps because what it does, it gives you a view here section here, a menu, and you can actually see your entire DOM that the view is attached to. So in this case, if you click on this root, it shows you a bunch of things like, okay, our typing, connected user. See, these are all the data attributes that are available. And delete later is also available, which has the value of hello world. So, and then message is the object, and then there's a messages array. So everything that we defined is actually available here. So that's cool. That's what we wanted to see, right? So you can then, actually debug easily. So this is like a way of debugging your Vue instance if you have any problems. Like for example, if hello world was not printing, you would see this here, that maybe the value is something else. Okay. So in this case, if you click implementation, I know it's very basic, but that's the building block of Vue.js. We have instantiated data, and it shows here in the HTML real time. So let me show you something quick here that's again useful for using Vue.js. If I open my console, my Chrome browser I'm using, there's something called a Vue Dev Tools, a Chrome extension called Vue Dev Tools. So you should go and download and install the Vue Dev Tools Chrome plugin. It's not required, but it helps because what it does, it gives you a view here section here, a menu, and you can actually see your entire DOM that the view is attached to. So in this case, if you click on this root, it shows you a bunch of things like, okay, our typing, connected user. See, these are all the data attributes that are available. And delete later is also available, which has the value of hello world. So, and then message is the object, and then there's a messages array. So everything that we defined is actually available here. So that's cool. That's what we wanted to see, right? So you can then, actually debug easily. So this is like a way of debugging your Vue instance if you have any problems. Like for example, if hello world was not printing, you would see this here, that maybe the value is something else. Okay. In my console now, if I just, type something like this $VM0, that's my Vue value, right? So if I do $VM0, it should give me that Vue object, the same thing that we got, see here. And it gives you a bunch of things about the entire Vue instance, or children, mode, and everything. So again, this is all fun stuff just for your learning purpose if you want to see, debug. I like to use the Chrome inspector a lot. It kind of gives me an idea of how things are working. So you could see that. But I highly encourage you to install this Chrome plugin so you could see and debug if you have any problems with Vue itself. Anyway, so let's go back here and let's try and do some more things now. So we have the Vue instance ready. Now, one more thing I want to do is that let's obviously get rid of this delete later stuff. I don't really need this anymore. That was just for, demonstration purpose. Let's save that. And then let's get rid of this guy here. Okay. All right. So that's good. And now you can see that there's a lot of code here, and we're going to be adding a lot more code in this JavaScript. So it's better to refactor, which means let's take all this stuff out of here. And let's put this in a file by itself. So we're going to create a new file, and let's call it client.js. And put this here. And obviously you don't need the script tags anymore because this is a JavaScript file. So let's make sure you get rid of that. And now we have a Vue instance defined in the file by itself, which is cool. So let's save this. And obviously don't forget to include this now in the script tag. Okay, so script source equals to client.js. All right. So we got that. So everything should still work. Yep, it works. All right, good. All right, so let me just drag this a little bit here. Find in the file by itself, which is cool. So let's save this. And obviously don't forget to include this now in the script tag. Okay, so script source equals to client.js. All right. So we got that. So everything should still work. Yep, it works. All right, good. All right, so let me just drag this a little bit here so we can see the screen. All right, so now let's go back to my HTML, and obviously, there's everything is static right now, right? My HTML is completely static. So we've added the Vue instance, but we're not really doing anything, which is kind of stupid, right? So let's do some prototyping here of Vue, again, some dynamic stuff. So the first thing that Vue does really well, which is really the cool part, is now I don't need to hard code any of this stuff here. What we're going to do, we're going to say something like we're going to add, we're going to show the chat messages in a loop, because in my Vue instance, I'm going to pull some data. So how does that work? So let's take a look at that. For example, I could now say online users, right? So I'm going to say, let's just change that, online users. So, or connected users, really. And in my connected users, I'm just going to give like user A. For now, let's just keep it very simple. User B, and that's good enough, right? Okay, so save it. And now remember, I showed you can access this variable in curly braces in my HTML. So I'm assuming that my connected users are user A and B. I'm still hard coding it, but the idea is that I wanted to show you how Vue will make this happen much easier. Of course, as we go along, we're finally going to be pulling all this information with actual data. But I'm going to take it out of the HTML and put it in here, some of that hard coding. So now in my HTML, I'm just going to say for online users, I'm just going to say here, right? We have an online user section, which is right here. So remember, this 5 is hard coded, obviously, and I only have 2 here, which is hard coded. So let's change that. So instead of saying the number 5, now you see the power of Vue. I'm just going to say connected users dot length. Aha! Isn't that awesome, right? Because now all I'm saying is whatever is in my connected users array, the length of that is going to be my number of online users. And I'm going to make sure that I adjust this in my code whenever necessary. When a user, for example, when a user connects to the chat room, I add them to this array, ++, right? When a user leaves the chat room, I remove them from this array. And Vue makes sure that this information, the data binding, is updated in real time for you on the browser. So this will, so you don't have to do anything else, just do connected users.length. So let's see. If I save this, and if I reload this, okay, it did work. We have some issue. Let's see. What did I do wrong here? So let's try and debug this. If I go back to my root, so I do have the connected users, but I missed a curly brace at the end to close it. All right, another error that happens sometimes. Okay, so let's refresh. Still didn't work. Okay, so make sure my spelling, this connected users, is the same. .length, my client.js, connect users. Oops, I messed up the name. Let's make it connected users. All right, more errors. And this is the fun of programming, right? There you go, online 2. Pretty cool. Let's wrap this in a nice parentheses, so gives you that effect. All right, so let's put this in a parentheses. And online 2. So you see the power of Vue, right? So cool. All right, so now we've got the online users or the connected users correct. Let's do one more thing before I end this particular video, this tutorial. Let's also remove this hard coding of the user list because we already have connected users, length, but we need to tell the names. So remember we have in the data, here, we have user A and user B. So why don't we get that? Okay, so what do we do here? Another cool thing about Vue.js. It is so awesome. Let's get rid of all these extra li, the list items. Let's just keep one list item. And all you do is you do something called a directive. Again, learn more about them on the Vue tutorials in general, but something called v_for, and that allows you to run a for loop, and it takes basically the list that you want to run the loop on, the array. So I'm going to do for user in connected users. So what this means that connected users is my array, right, that I've defined in my data. And I'm going to loop through it using this sort of loop variable. So this user can be anything. I can do a in whatever. This doesn't matter. But I'm going to call it user just to, so that it makes sense. And this has to be the name of the array that you're looping over that's defined in your data. And now inside this, in the actual value, I'm just going to do user, which is again this loop variable. So make sure this and this is same, right? So yeah. Okay, so that's cool, right? So let's try that.